Weight loss resistance is one of the most common things that women will come to me for, and this can be dependent on so many factors. We know that it largely depends on your metabolic flexibility. There is some research to suggest that specific types of diet can impact this. Something like low carb versus low fat may indeed impact results. There are at least 3 studies that have examined the weight loss approach to both of these methodologies. It can be very different for those that are insulin resistant versus metabolically flexible. So it's another indicator that bioindividuality is truly key. There's also some degree of genetic involvement with 12 different types of SNPs. These are single nucleotide polymorphisms that impact weight loss or weight gain. This requires further research, but is absolutely a compelling contributor to weight loss resistance. And it's important to note that obesity is not just about calories in, calories out, nutritional habits, or less physical activity. There are other contributors to weight loss resistance that can be made attributable to the health of our gut microbiome. We know that we have 100 trillion cells in our microbiome, and it's postulated that the gut may act as its own endocrine organ, which I find absolutely fascinating. It may impact our ability to extract nutrients. It can impact how we store these nutrients, and also how we burn them. Research actually suggests that obese individuals have less bacterial diversity, largely because they probably are not seeing a lot of different types of foods in their diet, different bacterial ratios, and alterations in pathways in how our bodies actually harvest nutrients from food. There's actually a recent rodent study that was done that showed that obese mice have a gut microbiome that extracts more calories from carbohydrates. Now, we aren't mice, but we can then consider the fact that this may be the same case for humans. Dr. Sarah Gottfried speaks very openly about the fact that 99% of weight loss resistance is related to hormonal imbalances, and I have to agree. Hormones like insulin and leptin and thyroid, cortisol, estrogen and testosterone, and their impact on the hypothalamus pituitary axis. Too much stress impacts the hypothalamus pituitary axis, or the hpaxis, which actually orchestrates a lot of these key hormones, which can lead to too much cortisol secretion. This then impacts things like our immune function. You'll see people that are commonly stressed out and they get sick more frequently and more easily. And certainly with COVID, we want to be really mindful of this. You'll see a lot of truncal or waist obesity, which no one wants. And you can sometimes be left feeling wired and tired. In order to address hpaxis stress and help balance hormones, it's important to consider that you want to stay as balanced as properly as you can. So things like meditation, yoga, walks in nature, especially in the morning, which can help offset the circadian rhythm, high quality sleep, and then taking in things like vitamin C and minerals that are lost due to the stress. So I like to think about magnesium, potassium, and sodium in particular. And if you're intermittent fasting, you should be doing these already. Also, the impact of negative self-beliefs, limiting beliefs, and shame all can exacerbate that HPA axis stress. So it's really important that we have an honest internal dialogue with ourselves about where we are in time and space. You also consider changing your exercise. So less chronic cardio, more things like HIIT or Tabata, that's high intensity interval training. Lifting weights, so important, especially as we're getting older, because the more lean muscle mass we have, the more calorie burning muscle we possess. You can consider supplements like Cerephos and specific adaptogenic herbs like Relora, rhodiola. And last but not least, make sure you're having an open, honest discussion with your primary care provider or your specialist. Before I end this video, I want to make sure I touch on some other hormones to consider. So leptin. The more obese you are, the more fat you have on your body, the more likely you are to be leptin resistant. This is that key satiety hormone. It's also impacted by poor quality sleep. So yet another reason to make sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours a night of really good quality sleep. We also talk about estrogen. This is especially imbalanced as we get closer to perimenopause, the 5 to 7 years preceding menopause. We initially will see a loss of progesterone as our ovaries are producing less progesterone. We'll get this relative imbalance of estrogen to progesterone. You'll very likely see things like heavy periods, PMS, tender breasts, and some weight gain. One of the ways that you can help offset this, is in addition to the other things I've already recommended, is making sure you're getting your proper macros, protein and healthy fats, lots of cruciferous vegetables, Brussels sprouts, kale, etc., and making sure you're having a bowel movement every day. That's one of the best ways to help get rid of recirculating estrogen. Next is thyroid. Go back and listen to my prior videos on thyroid. You want to be your own best advocate about what test to ask for, when, and why. And if you're underactive, some of the symptoms that you typically will have are things like constipation, dry skin, depression, and hair loss. Last but not least, let's talk about insulin. It is not a bad hormone, but it can be a fat storage hormone. And so things that can help mitigate insulin is eating less often, so not eating 16 to 17 times a day like the average American is doing, eating proper macros, again, protein and fats, going ketogenic or low carb can also be helpful, eating less carbs, and getting your fasting insulin checked to help mitigate and determine whether or not this is an area of focus as well. Stay tuned for my next video in this series.